is the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast. It's now August and my name's Andrew Jones.
And I'm Neil Greggor.
How you doing, Neil?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Andrew. You?
Yeah, I'm a bit excited if I'm honest with you.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, this is going to be our first podcast of going twice a month in August.
That's true, yeah.
So this is going live 1st of August.
Yeah, fantastic.
So
fantastic.
Definitely, I'm really excited about that.
Yep.
And as we record this, we've just spent another day recording podcasts.
Yes.
I think we've got some great podcasts to look forward to.
Very, very good ones to look forward to.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun today. A lot of fun.
Really
Obviously,
fun.
You'll hear all of those as over the year as it goes on, because we've got a nice lot already booked already, which is fantastic.
We have certainly.
But anyway, it's August. I can't say whether the weather's good or bad at the moment, because as we record this, it's a bit dull and overcast, which is just, we are having a cracking summer this year. Let's be honest with you. We're not getting this heat everyone hoped would maybe make up for the wet spring we've had. But anyway, it's August, and this month we are going to be talking about amino acids. Hello, I'm Andrew Jones.
And I'm Neil Greggor.
And welcome to the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry.
Farmer, advisor, processor, and everyone else. We have topics and episodes that will interest you.
We discuss the practical and the technical aspects of different UK dairy industry topics.
We aim to make you think about what you're doing and ask yourself, can it be done differently?
Listen to us speak with specialists from inside and outside the industry about their area of expertise.
Subscribe and listen to episodes for free on your favorite podcast platform, or sign up to our website www.chewingthecud.com for podcast notifications so you never miss an episode, and links to our socials.
Or email us direct on podcast@chewingthecud.com.
If you like what we do, please share and leave us a review to show your support. And that's it. Enjoy today's episode.
Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud. And as we've said, this month we are talking about amino acids. Our guest this month is Andrew Harrison for I'Anson Brothers up in Yorkshire. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, everyone.
How are you doing?
Yeah, not so bad. Thank you very much.
Is it as joyful weather up there as it is with us as we record this?
Oh, absolutely terrible. It's 13 degrees and not improving anywhere. No good for grass growth or anything.
I know.
No.
It's not going to do anything, is it?
Everywhere I've been traveling, they've been complaining about the growth. It's
terrible. You know, it's getting 6 weeks after first cup, really. And so, still stuff a good fortnight off. We're getting to like 8-week intervals, but if the grass isn't there, it just isn't there. If you miss that early gap, it's turned into a long period now. Like,
you've got to go with what you've got to go with, haven't you? But obviously today we're talking about amino acids. But before we do that, Andrew, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background and how did you get to where you are today?
Yes, I'm Andrew Harrison. I'm the technical sales manager at I'Anson's. Is my occupation. I'm from a dairy and sheep farm up in Lancashire, where we have a small dairy herd of 50 odd cows and 300 and something sheep. So I was there and always wanted to be a farmer. Went to Harper Adams University down in Shropshire for my degree in agriculture with animal science. Really enjoyed my time down there. Did a placement year split between working on a dairy farm in Derby and at Cornell University on a study exchange.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
Oh, fantastic. And I guess that's where I got into amino acids to start with. Did 6 months there. And it was quite good in a way because you were able to choose the modules that you wanted to do. So I sort of cram-packed every dairy cattle nutrition and dairy cattle module into 6 months. And that's all I did. So all the foundation things just forgot about, just did all the advanced dairy cattle nutrition work. And fantastic. Did things there that I couldn't do over here. Ultrasound scanning. We even did embryo transfer work and things like that, which, because it's different rules to do with veterinary and everything else, even animal nutritionist students could have a do at. So a fantastic time there. So I was obviously Cornell University, Cornell Nutrition Model, CNCPS. So I learned how from the people that invented the model how to use that model, which is a very good amino acid model, although there are a few. So from there, came back, did my final year, finished university with a first class honours degree, did all the various stuff. I think I did. I was dairy student of the year, all that sort of things, which was quite good.
Did you right then?
Yeah, I did reasonably well, and various other things. So, and then I sort of came back. I was going to do a master's. If you did well at university, you could actually go on and do your master's for free. And being a tight Lancastrian, the option of free was quite appealing to me. Didn't really know what to do too much. At home at the time, we were drawing 14.5, 15p a litre during that 2015, 2016 milk price crash. So the conversation about coming home was fairly short.
Basically.
We'd bought feed off I'Anson's for 20-something years and always paid with bills, so ended up getting a job here. So I started here as the nutritionist, and then over time I'm now technical sales manager, just responsible for the whole sales team, for the pricing, for formulations, for product development, on-farm rationing, all the rest of it. So yeah, it's a really good varied role. Great company.
And say you've obviously done well to progress. What's that? 8 years from where you were to where you are now, sort of thing.
Yeah, keep braying on, and it's great role, great company. It's a family-owned firm. It's owned by the fourth generation with the fifth generation in the company. Still got a local feel to it, but we're very strong in our area. Deal with a range of dairy, beef, and sheep farms, and it's still got that personal touch. I know most of my customers personally. And that just helps massively in the farming industry. If people know who to contact at the company, and I know who I'm contacting, it makes it all so much easier.
It does, to be honest. It does for me, because I know different clients I deal with. Obviously, I deal with anybody and everybody, basically. It makes it easier. I know I have certain companies I prefer to deal with because you know who to talk to.
That's right.
If you've got a problem, you deal with them. You're not stuck in a great chain of different people that you've got to try and find the answer from.
Yeah, it's also very comfortable just chatting to them and being able to call them and just.
And did I see you're opening a new feed mill or something?
Yeah, so it was quite exciting for the industry and for the company. So we've been in operation 124 years. We started off in 1900, and there's a few different sides of the business. So we obviously farm feeds is the bulk of the business, direct onto farm. We also do micronized cereals, so cooked cereals. Some really interesting things there on starch degradability and bypass protein from microbial protein, which is really cool. We make coarse rations. We do quite a lot of horse feeds as well. We're current site's on the edge of a village, and we've sort of hit capacity there for quite a while. So the family's made the decision to sort of take the next step and develop a new greenfield site on an industrial estate on the side of the A1. Built a new greenfield site, feed mill from scratch. A fantastic investment.
A fair investment, I'd say.
I bet.
And it's a testament to the family's commitment to agriculture and farming in the northwest. And they're setting themselves up now for the next 60 years. And it's a fantastic thing. We got our first test feed. We're in the final very stages of manufacture now. But we're on with the final bits of testing, and first deliveries coming very soon.
Right. Were you like a kid in the toy box going, can I have this? Can I have this? Can I have this?
Yeah, it's been a fantastic thing to be part of, to be fair. We've been on with it for 10 years. So I've been on with it for 6 or 7. It's a long-term project between, thinking about it and what you want to do. So, it went from, right, we're thinking of building this feed mill. What should it do? What machinery should we have? What processes should it have? And so it went from, we had paper. I can picture it now. We were in boardroom with some big paper, and it was like, well, what kit do we want? How do we want it to make it? To get it to do various things to try and future-proof it. And as you know, with all these big projects, no matter what you do, you'd never think of everything, but we were really trying very hard to think of everything we could want it to make. Still being efficient and cost effective and all the rest.
So what did you ask for that you got, and what did you ask for that you didn't get?
The big thing was at the moment we're a compound feed mill, and we can do blends but not very efficiently, and I wanted to be able to make blends through a feed mill in a highly efficient way. Not a way that's having blend sheds is fine. It's a low capital way of getting into the game. but you're burning a lot of diesel. It's labour intensive. There's a lot of shrink loss as well. And I wanted a blend facility of the future within the mill. And we've achieved that now. We're doing my first test batches of blend today, so I've got half an eye on that just to see how that goes. I got most of what I wanted, but it's a bit like anything. It's like buying a car or building a house. It's how far do you want to go, and eventually you've got to deal with the realities of the budget. But
you have to.
It's a fantastic facility.
And
really
not
efficient.
delay the project by trying to do too much and carry on trying to do something. You never stop, then, do you?
So
at some point you got to stop.
When do you hope is going to be officially a go?
So we've a few little bits finishing off to do, but August time I think is when we'll have practical completion of the site. But certainly we are manufacturing feed of a saleable quality at the moment. It's all there and going. It's fantastic.
Just obviously everyone move across and away you go.
So in terms of capacity, at the moment we're putting in the buildings fit out for 4 lines. For 400,000 ton lines. We're only putting the machinery in for 2. That's still double our existing capacity at Massam.
But leaving you space to grow.
Yeah, that's all part of future proofing. Even a matter of putting the foundations in for future development for the buildings next to the shed. Even once we filled this building to go on and do, it's all very. It's come from a family that's been probably bolting things onto a mill for a while. Let's just have a plan as to where it's going to go as we.
That's you were certainly thinking well ahead there, aren't you, in terms of putting that in already?
Yeah. So it's an exciting time to be a sales manager.
Definitely. So, anyway, let's talk about today's topic, which is amino acids. Now, I asked Andrew to be part of this as our guest and today's expert, but I will sort of say now I did a trial with Chemin, was it 4 winters ago, with them and another commercial partner, or coming up 4 winters ago it would be, maybe 5, blimey. At the time, I didn't realise it was the first commercial trial of the new Chemin products as they were at the time in the UK market. Now, from my point of view, they work fantastic, and we'll obviously talk about that as we go. But obviously, I want to bring Andrew in to talk about his experience and what he's been doing with them since then. So I guess really, by the sounds of it, we need to start sort of back at Cornell. What got you looking at amino acids back in Cornell?
I mean, even then, it was obvious that was sort of the direction that the industry is going into. I mean, we should say some of them have been around, 10, 15 years probably. And from what I understand, I remember some of the webinars that you and I originally met on. Is it something like the States? Is it something like 50? I don't know. There's a large proportion of dairy users in the States use them. There's a smaller portion, something like 25% was the number in Europe use them. And we're sort of only 5% or something like that, isn't it? And I mean, now we've got the direction of travel with soya being pushed out, et cetera, these things probably have come a little bit more to the fore. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been some growth in the usage in the UK, but certainly we're still a little bit behind the times. And so really going back to a basics point, if you compare the ruminant industry to a monogastric industry, amino acids have been absolutely crucial there for 50 years, maybe.
The difficulty for us is the fact they've got to be rumen protected, haven't they? Yeah. Because they've got to go through the rumen into the small intestine to be useful. If we feed the amino acids that the monogastrics use, they're not going to work because the rumen's just going to destroy them before they've even got where they need to go.
Yeah, so that adds a lot of complication and cost to it. But my wife is a pig nutritionist, and whenever we talk about amino acids, I had one conversation about it. Says, well, what happens if you don't feed amino acids to pigs? And she goes, they die. And that sort of like helps me think that, maybe it's a good idea that we look into this in a bit more detail. And it's amazing the power of the rumen and microbial protein forgives us of so many sins, because that is such it's a wonderful amino acid balance source, is microbial protein. And that means that the rumen itself is naturally doing a lot of it itself, but we still need to understand it to maximise it and supplement it where appropriate.
And if we take a step back, if I remember, there's 20 amino acids, isn't it? Of which some argue exactly the figure, but basically half are produced by the body and half are what they call essential amino acids, which are ones that we need to supplement or supply or feed or whatever it happens to be, because the body can't produce them naturally. Now, certainly in the ruminant industry, there are only 2 essential amino acids available for use today. I know there's stories of a third out there, So we are still, as you say, a long way behind the likes of the monogastric because of the cost, et cetera, of getting them through the rumen.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's lysine and methionine are the two.
Yeah.
Which we have available commercial sources for. And to be fair, even then, there's only really one in the UK commercially available lysine source.
I'm not sure. I think you could be right. I'm not sure on that. I mean, if we look at it like that, most diets in the UK are short of methionine, aren't they?
Yeah.
Most are pretty good with lysine until you start taking the soya away. And once you take the soya away, that's usually when you end up being short of lysine. And that's when using some lysine supplementation can have its advantages.
Yeah, that's interesting, Andrew. I've got a question. I'm the exact opposite of a nutritionist. I do genetics, and so my role is to ask stupid questions. You guys were speaking about the rumen and the fact that amino acids are created by the rumen. What exactly does an amino acid do? It's in the rumen. Everything. What is it? What's its role?
So, going back a step, sorry, when two nutritionists start talking.
Exactly.
An amino acid is a building block of protein. And so there's these 20 amino acids, and it's a bit like pieces of a jigsaw type thing.
Yep.
And as you know, if you look at muscle for tissue or anything else like that, it's built up of chains of amino acids, which are built up into structures, which are then peptides. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a bit since I was at uni. And and certain proteins have more requirements for different amino acids, and they all have various different combinations. A bit like, if you imagine DNA helixes that are all merging together, it's a little bit like that with proteins.
Understanding what you're saying. We also have protein. And then so basically it's to increase the protein in the diet almost, and to make it more available, or
it certainly can. You can replace. Once you sort of get into it, and again, Andrew, please correct me if I'm wrong, you can start to drop the crude proteins because you are feeding. I mean, I guess if I guess the analogy I use with a lot of people, and it comes back to, I'll go on to Chris Reynolds in a minute, but if you go back to when I was a lad, geez, it makes me sound old when I say that, doesn't it? When I was a youngster, we used to feed crude protein diets to cows a lot higher than we do now. I mean, I've looked it up since, and the optimum crude protein level for milk production is 22.5% crude protein. Now, so what was being done is they were literally blanket chucking everything they could at the cow and go, here, use it, and what you don't use, you just expel. So whether she pees it, whatever, hence why you get that strong ammonia smell if they've got too much protein. They're just trying to expel all that protein and wasting energy expelling that protein. So again, limiting potential production there. So over the years, that's dropped and dropped and dropped. And now most diets are 16.5, 17, would you say, Andrew, would be a fairly norm? You do see some higher, and I haven't for a little while, but I know there was a few people around here who were still running 19% plus crude protein diets, which is just criminal, really, when you look at the environmental cost and you look at the financial cost. But what's happened is instead of blanket throwing now, we filtered it down and down and down and down and gone, right, you need this 16.5 crude protein, but actually you're still now short of certain amino acids. So the way to do it now is to supplement it, and you can get down. There's a trial at Reading that went on for 5 years. It finished a couple of years ago, and I think you were on the webinar, weren't you, with Chris Reynolds, I think, Andrew? And they did diets that was at 14, 16, 18%. And they said they can make cow's milk at 14%. That wasn't a problem. What they seemed to find with those ones at 14% was they didn't have the longevity. They had less longevity. So the thinking was, and obviously they couldn't prove it 100%, but the thinking from Chris Reynolds was that what they're missing is they're missing some of those essential amino acids that benefit the animal in a health way. And therefore, he was saying, if you're going to do them that low, you need to supplement, or you will affect the longevity of those animals. And that's some of what we're going to talk about today, isn't it? Is the health benefits that you and I have seen from doing that. I mean, anything you want to add to that, Andrew, at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's moving away from crude protein as an industry. Crude protein's a lab test. It's nitrogen times by 6.25. And so it tells you very little as to what is actually going on.
It's just a guesstimate, basically, isn't it?
And to be fair, I'm amino acid supplementing diets that are 18% protein plus, because there's just so much nitrogen coming into the system that I cannot get rid of.
Yep.
If you've got some 20% crude protein silage and you've got a clamp full of it,
you've got to do it, haven't you? Yeah.
Nothing you can do. But they're still deficient in amino acids. They're still, because I cannot get enough degradable starch and all the rest of it safely to use all that nitrogen. So it becomes a very difficult balancing act, and I'm trying to just not look at it too much. If you're running heavy maize diets, then really you can get down to 15.5 proteins quite easily. I know a friend of mine, Ken Marsh, he runs them quite successfully. I don't have that much maize in my area, but I'm quite happy to go down there. I just look at metabolizable protein supply mainly, and if that's meeting the requirements, then I'm fairly happy at a range of crude proteins. But you feel like you're wasting money if you're running anything above a 16.5, 17.
Yeah, because what ration program do you use these days?
So I use AMTS, which is a commercial version of CNCPS. That's quite a good story as well, in that obviously I was trained on CNCPS when I was over there, but I really struggled with it once I came home to get it to diet cows properly. Because our grass silages are so different, and they haven't really got that categorized very well. But a few things happened. I was formulating on Ultramix, on versions of feeding to milk, basically. Make cow's milk on that, absolutely fine.
Yep.
But when you start looking into amino acids and some of these more detailed things, you were down to a couple of grams of methionine to the cow. You've got to be really accurate in where you're going to make sure you're making the right decisions.
It's precision nutrition, isn't it?
Precision nutrition with expensive ingredients, so you've got to be fairly right. So I was doing some work here, and to be fair, Cornell, I think they funded there was a PhD between an Irish university and Cornell, where they started looking at NDF fiber degradability of fresh grass. And in the American mines, grass was like 4-foot hay, and that's what it is to them. It's dried. It's really slow degrading. It fills them all up. They couldn't get their heads around the fact that I have 20% dry matter grass silage that's been 5 weeks grown. They went to the Irish study and they did NDF degradability of fresh grass, and the degradability curves were like just off the charts, 90+% NDF degradability, and they were like, whoa. So once we got this feed bank of data as to how our grass actually reacts, and we've also got a lab now that's is doing the correct analysis for it. But to be fair, most of I'm still
in the UK now, isn't there?
Yeah. To be fair, most of it I'm just using my experience, guessing, as to what the NDF curves are of various silages, and that gets me pretty close using the model. And now I'm confident that it's far more accurate. It turned into a bit of a lockdown project, to be honest with you. If it wasn't for lockdown and having a bit of time just to think about these things, and we sent a lot of raw materials away to get analysed, which is another whole really interesting topic. It would never have happened, but because I couldn't go and visit farms or anything, and 6 hours worth of work took 2 hours, I suddenly had loads of time to be able to get a model working, and now it's very good. The biggest testament to that, I always say, is I can go onto a farm pretty much, and if I take the average of across everything and I put it through the model, it's 95%. If they're doing 36 litres, the model will say they're doing 35.5 to 36.5. And then you know that if you start tweaking things, that you're in the right ballpark, which is a big thing.
Yeah, definitely.
What model do you use, Andrew?
I still use, to be honest, Ultramix with Nutriopt. I did probably during you say lockdown, look at using a CNCPS, and it was either ATMS or NDS. And I'm sorry to everybody listening to this because we're probably getting a little bit acronymed out. I'll be honest with you, I looked at my preference, I think would have been NDS. I felt it went into more detail. I know when you look at the screen, it makes you feel like you're going to be sick because there's so much information on screen. It feels like it's a bit of an overload. But I felt it went into more detail on the amino acids and on the fatty acids. And it's just simply because I guess I didn't do it because having gone out in business on my own just over 2 years ago, it was just another expense I didn't need right now. So it's still there in the back of my head. And as you say, Ultramix works really well. So, it does what it's supposed to do. It's just what it's lacking is probably the accuracy on some of this precision stuff that we're now talking about on the amino acids.
My experience showed that actually the model doesn't make that much difference. It's the quality of the feed bank, if you feed ingredients, that really drives it. You're way better off using Ultramix with a solid set of feed ingredients than deciding to use NDS, and they're all very similar if they're both CBS models, with the American data set, because you'll end up in trouble.
That's sort of part of always been a little bit of my worry, as you say, now you've got a lab here, but yes, as you say, that's a little bit of the worry, is it's a little bit too American biased maybe. And I have seen some diets of other people I've looked at that are AMTS, and you're just like, this isn't working. And it isn't working, I think, for like the reasons you're saying. But we're getting off a little bit. So what benefits have you seen from, where you're saying you got some 18, ideally, and you'd say you'd quite happily take some down to about 15.5, did you say? So if you're running some at 15.5 and you're supplementing with methionine and lysine?
Yeah, so it's obviously, it's a conversation with the customer and the farmer as to what we're all happy with. I have my preference is to supplement both lysine and methionine where required. So my process generally is I formulate based on methionine to ME. So we're doing methionine to energy. And that's quite simple within AMTS to do that. And the big benefit of that is that you're using the same model as a lot of the trials have been done in. So you're speaking in the same language, which gives you a bit of reassurance. So I think it's Van Amberg work. They're recommending sort of 1.18 grams of methionine per mcal of ME. I think I've got my units right, but it's definitely 1.18.
I'll take your word on that.
Yeah. And then balance lysine to methionine at 2.65. So
you're going down to 2.65 now.
Yeah. Now, in my mind, I'm a lot happier. As long as I can keep my 2.65 right, I'd rather go to 1 gram of methionine per mcal of ME and get my lysine right. What you find is, as you push, if I'm keeping them both together, which I prefer, then the higher you push your methionine, the higher you push your lysine, and then you're feeding more and more and more supplemental amino acids, and it gets very expensive very quickly. So I'd rather get it half balanced right, equally, than just throwing loads of methionine at them. And that works pretty well, to be fair.
Because it is interesting. So even things have developed the last couple of years, haven't they? Because I know, we'll mention them again, Kemin did some webinars on transition management recently. And I know when we did the trial, say 4 years ago, and we started obviously supplementing the transition cows, it was like, well, where do we put them? And it's like, best guess came back from Kemin, well, we think just feed them half of what you'd supplement the milking cows at. So that's what we did. And obviously now the more recent work is showing actually those transition cows need to be fed more than half of your milking requirement, isn't it? I can't remember exactly what the figure was, but I know that came out there. So I know I did a diet for somebody recently, and it's like, actually, we need to be feeding a little bit more than what we've fed in the past, because that's now the latest recommendations.
Yeah, and it's where you select it and want to use it to get the most benefit. Biggest bang for buck will be transition.
Yeah. But they've always said sort of transition in the first 120 days, isn't it? After that, you're not getting the same sort of return on it, and you're probably getting a lag of benefit as well. I mean, we say that. What sort of benefits have you said from feeding amino acids from maybe a diet you wouldn't have been feeding amino acids? Yeah,
so my mind is that you'll get the benefit in yield, fat and protein. It's very difficult to determine where it's going to come. It might come as yield, it might come as fat, it might come as protein, it might come as all three. And I think that will generally cover off the financial cost of doing the amino acids. But the big benefit is on fertility and on health and on longevity. They are much more difficult to put numbers against.
Yeah.
But that is, after we've been doing it for 3 months, 6 months, that's the feedback that comes back all the time, is that they've almost forgotten about the fact that the proteins went up, or that they gave another half a litre. It's that they're consistently getting good fertility, good health concerns, and all the rest of it.
To be honest, that's what some of my clients I've done it with since the trial is. We sat down, we did it, and we said, okay, the diet's going to be a little bit more expensive, but you should see, based on the trial work I was involved in, and the one they followed up with, probably about an extra 3 kilos of milk. That will then, cost per litre works out about the same if you get that 3 litres. And they're like, okay. And they said, but if we get the health benefits that you're talking about, That's what sold it to us. Doesn't matter that it's going to be a slightly more expensive headline cost, because cost per litre still works out the same. It's the health benefits we get from it. And they saw that. And I mean, as you say, it is hard to quantify, but I know certainly on that original trial I was involved in, and I know the one they did on a big farm in southwest of Wales, we saw an improvement of 3 days on the calving index.
Right.
So that's a big, and to be honest with you, I will say this out loud and probably get told off for it. We actually excluded the initial data from that trial because of the first something like 20 cows that got inseminated. I think 19 took on first service.
Yeah.
Or was it 15 out of 15?
I remember you told me about
Yeah, something like that. It was something ridiculous that the first batch of cows all took first service, and we just went, no one's going to believe that.
No, I remember you told me the story.
No one will believe it. So we pulled that data out, and that was excluded from the data because it was too good. No one would believe it. But the actual fact, on our first bunch of cows, they just all took first service.
Yeah. And what would you guys say? Has it been, do you think it has something to do with increased or improved condition?
Quality of the eggs, I think, is one of the big things. I mean, we have people doing embryo transfer work.
Yeah.
And if they've been on methionine or amino acid supplemented diets, the actual quality of the eggs is excellent.
Is it?
That makes sense, because
and
they
size as well.
You
know, the number, if they're flushing, the number of grade ones is really.
But that's why you get an increased fertility then, because it's one of the most forgotten factors is the quality of the egg. Because we have it, especially obviously been in Africa, is heat stress, and if you can reduce heat stress, your embryo quality is better. And so that's interesting. Yeah, well, while we're speaking about that, things like heat stress and any other of those been looked at, or
not from my knowledge on heat stress, but I'm sure if you're running healthier cows and all the rest of it, and it's going to help you on it.
And if the condition's better,
but it also does knock on, doesn't it? It's not just improving the health of the cow. There's work that shows that it actually improves the health of the calf in vitro, doesn't it? And that's coming through when it's born, is having a healthier calf when it hits the ground and gets up and going as well. So it's obviously, whatever it is, like you're saying, and I mean, certainly we're talking the methionine, it's what is missing. It is what they are short of. It's essential. We have to either feed it or supplement it. Well, if we can't feed it, supplement it. And then those things, it's a bit like, I guess, maybe not a good analogy, I don't know, but it's like grassland. We did that podcast with Andrew Steele, if you remember, on grassland and sulfur. You need that sulfur, because without that sulfur, that limits production of, I think, is it 2 of the amino acids? And therefore, if you don't have the sulfur, you don't produce those amino acids. If you don't produce those amino acids, you don't produce the protein in the grass.
Yep.
So if you want to improve the quality of your grass silage, therefore improve the protein of your grass silage, you need to ensure that you're supplementing with sulfur. And as he said, the research shows that a lot of grassland in the UK is short of sulfur. This is the same thing. Yes. Now that we've all cleaned up our act and not dying of acid rain. But it's the same principle, isn't it? We are obviously short of methionine, and without those methionine, certain proteins aren't made. If certain proteins aren't made, certain processes aren't happening within the cells. And if that isn't happening, we're not having the full health benefits that we should be seeing. And we're seeing that in the cow, whether it's improved fertility. I think there's some work, so it shows less metritis, less mastitis. All of these things are knocking on because they're obviously improving the immune system of the cow.
The stomach's working better.
Yeah, and then obviously we're obviously not over. I know Andrew said he's got some at 18, but they aren't usually. Then you normally pull the crude protein back. So if you're not doing that, you're not like I was saying, overfeeding, and therefore protein, and the body's using energy to kick out the excess protein that it doesn't need. All of these things have a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Andrew, at all?
No, I mean, it's speaking of genetics. I always think, what's the genetic potential of the modern dairy cow? That's in the herds all over the world. When we've got geneticists, what's the genetic potential in litres of a modern dairy cow?
Well, that's how long is a piece of string question. But the answer to that is how well you feed them.
Well, but
we have this continuous argument, don't we?
but it's not just how. I'll flip on that then and say it's not just how you feed them. Wearing my cow signals hat. It's
absolutely.
Funny enough, we were talking about this before we started, wasn't it? One of the reasons I got into cow signals was because the best will in the world, Andrew, myself, whoever, can give you the best diet, but it will only affect 20 to 25% of your potential production. It's the environment of the cows around it. So how long does she have enough lying time? Does she have enough ability to feed, to drink? All of the things that cow signals talk about.
But also, just back to what you said, Andrew, you're spot on, though, because what I've often said to farmers is the genetic potential of cattle nowadays is absolutely phenomenal. You can do whatever you want with it. But I've often spoken to farmers about this. I can supply them with the best genetics you can possibly get. But if you don't have a decent calf arriving, you don't raise it properly, everything, I might as well have given you a bull from down the road with no pedigree at all. It would make the same difference. So it's 100% in a link up. But I've got a...
Well, it's like when we talked with Laura about calf milk.
Well, that's what I was thinking about while you guys were speaking.
Yeah.
But Andrew, I've got another question on this, that amino acids income... Because, and again, probably coming from somebody that has no understanding. When we were speaking about soya, and obviously quite a few rations have almost milk buyers and are forcing people to use less soya, right? So you can actually replace that by increasing the amount of amino acid. Is it as simple as that, or is it more complicated?
Yeah, so soya is very high in lysine, generally.
Okay.
And so... To be fair, most of my diets, we don't overfeed soya in the first place, so that's why I've been using some supplemental lysine. I have a few that we use soya as the main protein source, and they're fine on it. And so if you want to take soya out, you're short of lysine, and so then you need to feed more to get it level. My best example of this is I have a customer that is a block calving person, which are always really interesting because you think of block calving as economically focused, but actually it's like if you're calving everything in 2 months, then you need some insurance. Yeah. And so you're going to then, if I'm calving all my calves in 2 months, I'm going to feed the best milk powder, and I'm going to feed the best calf starter. I'm going to have the best transition because this is going to dictate my profitability for the next 12 months. So we need to get everything as good as possible. Yeah. So we were doing this calf starter for this customer, and it had a lot of soya and a lot of full fat soya in it because it was a really top spec type calf starter. However, it was on Arla. Oh dear. So we're going to have to take the soya out of this calf starter. So I said, well, it was a 21%, something like that, 20% off the top of my head. Calf starter, take all the soya out. We can do that. We'll replace it with rape and distillers. It will actually make it £20 a tonne cheaper. Right. But it is worse because you've not got the right amount of lysine in it. So if I put in the additional lysine back into the calf starter, it would actually cost you £20 a tonne more than what it was. So that's so. But in the end, we decided that we'd keep the price the same. We put half the amount of lysine in, and that was like farmers' middle ground for it. But that was a great example of showing, why we feed soya, and also why we feed lysine, and why lysine actually makes it more expensive.
Sure.
We had fantastic results with that diet, though, both with amino acids and with soya. We took the soya out, performed really well. With the supplementals, we saw no change.
So it would work. In other words, it's just going to be more expensive.
So how, going back on that example, have you left the lysine where it is to make it the same price, or have you now upped it to where you wanted it to be because you're seeing the benefits?
We just left it at the same price.
Sorry, just to bring my ignorance in, what's lysine?
One of the 2 essential amino acids. So,
thank you.
Well, there's 10 essential amino acids, but there's 2 major ones in ruminant nutrition that we are most deficient in and that are actually available for us to use.
They always consider lysine. Now, Andrew, I believe you've also done some trials in young stock with amino acids. Is that right? Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done a few. The major one was one that we did in conjunction with Kemin and Ken Marsh on a farm in South Wales. I did the formulations for the starter for them diets, and that was a really interesting trial because we fed amino acids right the way through from calving all the way through to calving.
Okay, so
it was
from
the
when they
full
hit the
rearing
ground all the way through till they carve themselves 2 years later.
Yeah. And the theory was to then see how they perform differently in first lactation and also the benefits through. A really interesting trial. It was formulated with, they were very high spec starters on both diets. So we got good results on both, as you'd expect.
But
the biggest thing, there was a bit of a challenge. I can't quite remember.
What was the difference between the two diets? One had soya, one didn't, or what?
No, they were exactly the same,
right?
But one was balanced for amino acids.
Right, so the same base raw material, same, I don't know, whatever it was, 18% or whatever it happened to be. You just on the second one just added a little bit of lysine or methionine, whatever it happened to be, to ensure that it was correctly balanced.
Yeah. So for the young calves, this is getting a bit technical, but the control was at 0.87 grams per mcal for methionine, and the treated was at 1.18, which is the same as the cow full spec recommendations, and then lysine to methionine. 3.32 for the control, 2.67 for the amino acid treated. So quite big differences on amino acids, but all the base raw materials and it was the same formulation from a mill perspective, just that we added the amino acids to balance up on that.
And what did it add cost-wise?
I can't just remember off the top of my head. Can't put a price on success, can you? I can't remember. From my old it's going to be 40, 50 quid, I would imagine, at prices.
Not significant, but...
Well, it was still a fair bit if you're going to say, let's say calf, what was probably 300, 350 or 350 to 400. It's a reasonable jump, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But when you work it down to a calf base, it's not too bad. But in terms of ton prices, it can get a little bit scary.
Yeah,
but then it's so difficult to just, like you said, to qualify success.
So then, obviously, you fed them from, as everyone would, they'd be on calf starter, milk powdered start with, introduced onto a starter, then weaned, and then supplemented through until calving. And so, what did you see in the different stages, and then at the end of the trial?
Yeah, so in the calving period, they performed better, they grew better. But the biggest thing we saw, there was a bit of a disease challenge at the time. And what we found was that the amino acid treated calves survived, for want of a better word, but they were much better when this, was it crypto or something? I can't quite remember. Something salmonella, maybe something. Come into the calves. Sorry, this is a few years ago. And
whatever it was nasty.
Whatever it was nasty. And the untreated calves were hit a lot worse than the treated. In fact, they got it, but they went away and they carried on. And it was one of those things at the time, like, we're trying to do this trial and we've had this challenge, and it sort of, has it ruined the trial? But it actually probably made the trial in a way. So I think, where do we get to? I think there was 75% less mortality in treated in the calf period and things like that. And, it was the difference between, it might have been 1 and 4 or 5, something like that. But that's a lot of money. That more than pays for the cost of the amino acids.
Definitely.
And the other thing, which maybe links into that or not, but we found that they were much more uniform. So although, yes, they grew better and they did well, there wasn't the extremes. So in the untreated group...
What was the difference in growth rates?
A few percent. I want to say 5% off the top of my head.
Okay, so it was reasonable, but it's not like it was...
mind-blowing.
Big difference. Yeah.
Something
Again, like we're saying, potentially you've got the amino acids, you're getting better growth because you're able to get that muscle development potentially.
Yeah. But there just wasn't those 5 poor doers in the corner of the group and etc. And so in the untreated group, you had calves that had probably done quite well, as well as the other group, but you still had those that you had quite a big spread. And if you're in a block calving group, you want to have as consistent a group all the way through as possible.
How big a group were the two groups?
I think that was the 50 in each or 100 in each. Let's just have a look and see if I can find it. Something like that. It was a big trial.
So it's a reasonable number. It's not like it's 10 and 10 or whatever. No. It's a reasonable number.
Oh, no. There was 180 in each group.
180 in each group. Wow, that's
sure. Yeah,
that's a good number. So a big farm, obviously, to be running that number of cows.
Yeah, 400 cow farm, and we did it for his entire block on an autumn block system. So
incredible. Yeah,
definitely.
You don't need more animals than that in a trial, right?
No, exactly.
I've never done a trial with as many as that. It was
exactly. We're happy if you're 100.
So so you certainly saw them go through the disease challenge better. You certainly saw them, by the sounds of it, grow that little bit better and more consistently. That you weren't, as you say, having those odd few that you've always got a few, and you got that number particularly. You've always got one or two that just don't quite do it in the same way, don't you?
Yeah.
Which again would suggest that they are fighting any potential disease challenge better, you would argue as well, because they're continuing to grow rather than using that energy to fight growth. What's the final outcome of it then, in terms of when you got to the 2-year-olds?
Yeah, so the next stage was the serving the bulling heifers.
Yep.
So like their autumn calving, so we did sort of the first trial through the first winter. We kept amino acid supplementing them when they were outside at grass, whether that was necessary or not, or what impacts. But for the sake of the long-term thing of the trial, it was
Yep.
We'll just, for the sake of 4 months at grass, whatever, we'll do it. At bulling time, I think there was a 6% or a 6 percentage point increase in preg rate,
right,
on your heifers.
So improved preg rate on the supplemented animals.
Yeah.
Yep.
And because they both, it's not like there was a bad group and a good group. They've both been fed a really good diet, just with some tweaks to amino acids. We're talking down the last percentage of the diet here. So preg rate on the control was 38.1, and on the amino acids was 44.3. So you'd say both are good results, but 6% on a block calving preg rate for bulling heifers, that's pretty good.
That's
getting
good.
44% pregnant. Every 21 days, you can have a busy block.
Exactly. And as you say, with a block, that's what you want. But I mean, as you say, but 38%, you wouldn't laugh at that normally. No. Compared to that 44, it just doesn't look the same, does it?
But you would have expected on that system to have high conceptions, so that to get them even higher is amazing.
Yeah. A good farmer, really well run, really good at the job. So your base level's already so good to get good results above that.
To actually improve on good results. That's
well, exactly. Really exactly. Well, it's a bit like when I did the trial. I went to a farm and you basically did everything we wanted to do anyway. I think the only other thing we had to ask was just for the tractor driver to record anything that was thrown away, so we knew what. If they were wasting any feed, what it was. But otherwise, everything was being done as we wanted it to be done anyway. So it just makes doing trials like that easy when you know you've got a farm that's doing that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Then into first lactation, I don't actually have any numbers on that. But from word of mouth through Ken, who sort of it's his customer, and they've been really positive and really happy with it, and that they have performed better and all the rest of it. But I haven't just seen any numbers on that yet.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's still early days or whatever to see those sort of things. But really, even if you forget the calving, or we don't talk about that now, you're saying the results from that trial are showing health benefits, growth benefits, pregnancy benefits. All of these things knock on or have all of these are positive benefits, aren't they? And all knocking on one to the other, which is going to look better when they carve in. But so what you're saying is really it's okay, there's a little bit of extra cost to it, but you're seeing the benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if as I say, highest yielding cow, so going back to my genetic potential thing, highest yielding cows like 30,000 kilos, something like that, and we applaud ourselves when we do 10,000. So there's huge scope to be going on and doing more, and I think that we've got to be able to get these little bits fine-tuned to get the health benefits, to make sure that we can keep progressing and if we can get a cow to perform as near to a genetic potential as possible, then we're doing our bit right, aren't we?
Well, for sure. The example I think straight away is when we saw Mike Jones up at the Southwest Dairy Development Centre, and they brought a herd in to go in there, that he said the management on the farm where they were was doing really nicely. They were doing a good job. They were doing about 7,500 with good fertility. Within a year, those cows were doing 10,500 was it, with the same level of fertility, and that's just really just improving the environment of the cow. Because I mean, let's be honest, there's a damn good environment up at the Southwest Dairy Development Centre, but there's as you were saying, it's showing they have the genetic potential. It didn't take much really to allow them to express that genetic potential by another 50% on what they're doing. And like you're saying, could they be going on and doing even more? As you say, you do see hear of cows that can do 20, 30,000. I mean, not so much in this country, but you do elsewhere. And it shows, as you say, we've got the same genetics basically worldwide. We can do it if we feed right and if we get the environment right that allow her to perform.
I have a customer that they put robots in, fit them into an existing shed.
Yeah.
So we haven't even put the new shiny shed up and all the rest of it. And we've doubled the milk production literage in about 3-4 years, something like
That's
that.
amazing, isn't it?
22 to 44.
Wow.
Through diet. And we have altered the building, but we haven't. It's not a new one. It's not perfect.
And then the robots and everything, they're environmental factors. But one thing when we speak about sort of like the genetic potential of the cows and the production, that's pretty easy because you've got to sort out your guys from a nutrition point of view and ours from a genetics. But one of the things that I can't actually put my hand up and say we've been successful at over the last more than 30 years is actually getting our longevity to improve. And at the moment, we look at about 17% of our first lactations don't get to second lactation, according to AHDB figures. So
it's too high.
It's too high. Now, what you've been telling me today delights me because we'll actually work together. I would probably be able to say I'd rather lose a bit of production and get that longevity going from all avenues, whether it's from sustainability, from welfare, it doesn't matter, methane production, everything goes around getting that longevity higher.
Yeah, definitely.
So good job. This is great news.
Yeah, and that's so important. And the biggest thing for me is anybody, when milk price was 50p, it was easy to go and say, look, we can have a do with amino acids. You're on a constituent contract at 50p. Let's have a do and see if we can get another couple of percent milk protein because we know we're going to get paid for it.
Yeah.
And so I had a bit of a session there and got a few people signed up and formulated. But when the milk price has dropped and gone down to 35 and back up now a little bit, none of them stopped. And that's been the biggest benefit to me because they have seen the benefits on health and fertility and
100%. Oh, that's such good news. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's nice to hear that because that's the whole point, isn't it?
You have the conversations over, well, should we take the fat out or should we take the yeast out or what we're going to do to knock a bit off here and square some corners, but none of them were interested in taking the amino acids out.
Taking amino acids out. Oh, great. That's good.
That says it straight away, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
sums it up.
It's funny, we go back to, he's not milking anymore, but the farm we did the trial on, I think year after milk price did go down, so we did take it out just to see what it was, and he was like, just not getting quite in calf quite as well. So we then went and we just brought a couple of bags of methionine, put that back in the mix. It was a home mix, so it was easy to do. All of a sudden, it could be coincidence, you just don't know, but all of a sudden our fertility went back up again. It definitely, in many ways, to me, that sort of showed that it was working because we pulled it out and then we ended up putting it back in. And that says a lot. And so this was a farm when I first started working with him, was autumn calving and started calving July and finished calving March, maybe April. And I think we then, by the time I'd finished working, we sold up. We'd had most of those cows calved within July through till end of November. We pulled them back dramatically. And it did take a bit of a mindset change from him as well, not to keep serving them. But it was like, actually, and then he said at the end, actually, it does make a difference that I'm not worrying about it. Once the cows have gone out, that's it. We don't worry about it. It has actually, he was more worried about, would we have too much of a workload calving in July? Because he also had a fair arable enterprise as well. But then he was like, actually, it does work and it works really well because it eases us up other times of year. And that wasn't just because of the amino acids for sure, but the fact that, say, the following year we took him out to start with, and then he went, actually, let's put him back in, and it seemed to make that difference, and that was the only thing we changed.
I've had some really good results using it as part of I call it a dry cow concentrate. So where it's something that's like a kilo feed rate with some protected protein and the minerals and the magflex ammonium chloride or whatever, D-card, and then amino acids. One customer that gave us not free rein, but do what you see. Think a block carving person again. It's our big thing. Once a year, we're going to do everything we can to get it right.
Exactly.
And balance for the lysine and methionine at full rate. And it's always difficult because they're improving themselves all the time and the rest of the diet. But been really impressed with how they've milked. We're doing that now for 3 years, and it's not even a conversation whether we're going to do it or not. It's just same as last year, please.
But what do you think is holding back the industry in this country to using more amino acids when you'd say one of the first things we talked about was the fact that, we're behind Europe, and that's significantly behind the US in terms of our use. Do you think it's because people used sort of first generation products 10, 15, 20 years ago and were put off? Or, I think some people are being driven that way now because of reduction of soya, but why do you think people out there aren't using them? Or because they've been used incorrectly in the past?
I think the biggest thing is advisor confidence. I think most farmers it's probably at too fine a detail for the farmer to either, they're reliant on advice from the nutritionist or wherever.
Yeah, that's what you and I. Well, yeah, I was going to. You've said that. I know of a couple of places. I'm thinking of one farm had a nutritionist who was in there, and he was still balancing his diets like 17.5%, 18%, and then adding some amino acids on top and not quite using the right ones. He got out of the industry. Someone else has gone in there. And last time I spoke to the farmer, oh no, we don't feed amino acids anymore because it wasn't working. It was a waste of time. And I got to be honest, I happened to see the diet through a different avenue. And I saw it, and it wasn't going to work because it was something like the ratio was, was it something like 3.8 or 3? I know 3. It was well over 3 anyway. Well, as you've said, you're down. It's when I first started doing this, we were talking about 3-1, wasn't it? And it's now become 2.8, 2.7, now 2.65. Again, as understanding's got better, the ratio's coming down and down and down. So maybe that is what some of it is. I don't know, but as I say, bad advice.
Yeah.
It's
a tricky thing if you,
like us, isn't it?
If your model or your feed bank's not up to scratch, or you haven't categorized the diet right, you can easily give the wrong advice. And if you've gone in onto a farm and you've recommended something that's going to put your feed price up 30, 40, 50 pounds a ton and nothing happens, that's what terrifies most nutritionists or feed sales reps or whatever. And if you've done that once, then you won't do that because you'll be worried about losing a customer for the sake of doing some work on amino acids when generally everybody's happy. And even myself, I'm quite confident balancing for amino acids and when to use it and not, but probably 10% of the herds that I deal with we're doing amino acids with. And that's down to my time more than anything, I think, is to go to the rest of them and say, look, we're doing this, let's have a do at it. Yeah. But also then you're still frightened of going, well, we're going to have a do at this and it's going to cost X, Y, and Z, and are we going to get the benefits? And there's always somebody cheaper in there.
Well, yes, that does come into it sometimes, doesn't it? Let's be honest, but it does. It works. I think. Yeah. The outcome, I'd argue, from the trial we did, and I've used it on other clients since. It works. I've got no qualms that it works.
My theory is that it's probably been treated as an additive too much. It's not an additive. It's an essential nutrient. It's part of rationing.
Yeah, and I'll say it. You sometimes do then get financial consultants come in and look at it who don't understand the benefits of it, and go, well, it's costing you £8,000 a ton or whatever it is. It's not worth it. Well, how do you measure that? How are you sure? Do you understand what it's actually doing? And obviously, that's why we're here today, is try and give people a little bit of a broader overview of what is out there and what can be done, and the benefits of doing such a thing.
Yeah, certainly if you get into pulling soya out as well, then you can make it a lot more financially better, add up quicker.
Yes,
because you're saving in other departments as well. And if you pull in, if it is an instance, I say I have some diets that are running fairly high on protein. That's usually because I have no options. But if you are overfeeding protein with blend, then if you can pull half a kilo of blend off and feed some amino acids, and you will actually get healthy cows, and it won't cost you any more, and away you go. That's an absolute no-brainer.
So absolutely no-brainer.
Yeah. And as you say, you're probably right in what you commented earlier about confidence in terms of advisor, because to me, I just look and go, well, it's amino acids, been there, done that, worn the hat, quite happy with it, got no qualms with doing it. But as you say, some people just don't seem to.
It's also very relevant to the milk contract, John, because what you've just said is that if you drop back on something and you drop your production slightly but push up your solids, you'll probably be getting the same money.
Yeah, it all depends on your contract.
Certainly get that. Yeah. I'm sure we all get that challenge.
We've quite a few on white watery type contracts still up here, and that makes it very difficult. But I've even people on white water contracts happy to do it for the health and fertility benefits.
Right, I've seen the health and fertility benefits.
Yeah. Down here we're more on solids.
So, but to say straight away, I mean, say the 2 trials that Kemin did early on, both showed 3 days reduction in your calving index.
Yeah, well, on a white contract, that's just as important. So not more,
especially when you're block calving, it's really. I'd almost argue your milk is secondary to making sure those cows are back in calf. Yes, you need the milk to pay. Don't get me wrong, but what you need is to make sure those cows are back in calf, because otherwise your whole block system just falls apart.
That's right.
But
the passing on to the next generation, I think, is fascinating as well. If you can amino acid supplement and then that goes through onto the calf, that's absolutely fantastic.
Exactly.
Amazing,
it has a benefit. No, it is
so much.
It is. Well, I'm looking at the time now, Andrew, and I think it's time we probably need to wrap this up. So,
unfortunately,
because it's been a great chat as usual. Any last words of wisdom from yourself?
I mean, to anybody listening, it's to be confident, have a go at it, try anything once, and as long as there's plenty of support available there from whichever amino acid company that would be doing it, or your feed advisor, and there's loads of support there out there, and there's plenty of people that have done it before. And if you're a feed advisor, just ask for help if you're not sure. Gain some confidence around it and have a go. Nothing ever works 100% of the time, but if you can get as much support around as you can, and to make sure that you're doing the things as best as you can and characterize your diets as well as you can, then you've as good a chance of it to work as anything. And I do think that as we go further and further trying to improve yields, and especially on robotic herds where now the peak of milk production is so quick within, we have cows that are doing 40, 50, 60 litres in 20 days, or a fortnight. And to support those cows, I think it's so important that we get down to this level to make sure that we get the longevity and the production of those cows. And when you get into them circumstances, I think amino acids are getting towards being absolutely necessary, not just a nice to have. So be confident and ask for help, I would say.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Any comments from you, Neil?
No, that was great. Thank you, Andrew. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Learned a lot, and it's really like what you guys are doing. Thank you.
No, and as you say, it's all a team effort, where it's genetics, whether it's feeding, where it's vet, whatever. It is ultimately a team effort, and it's surrounding yourself with the right team to get
100%
the right answers. It's not one person doesn't have all the answers. Talk to the specialists in their area.
Yeah.
But on that, I guess I'd say yes. Thank you very much, Andrew. It's been great, and hopefully people listening will learn a little bit more about amino acids. And saying, if you do, talk to whether it's Andrew, myself, or whoever you're using, and see if we can help you. But other than that, I'd like to say a goodbye and thank you very much.
Yeah, goodbye from me.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Tune the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. And now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose, and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness, or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during the podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of Chewing the Cud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of Chewing the Cud Limited, and the views of Neil Greggor are personal and may not be the views of Viking Genetics and any affiliated companies. For more information on the podcast and details of services offered by Chewing the Cud Limited, visit www.chewingthecud.com. Thank you and goodbye.